I think that helps to lift the whole country industrial base, and I believe in the peace from strength piece.
Senator Shaheen, thank you for doing this. Fatih, thank you as well.
Good to be here.
The focus of this panel is what are the decisions that we need to make this decade in order to win this century, right? How does the U.S. win in this great power competition? As an industry, we want to make sure that we have technological and economic supremacy here, and partnering with government is a key focus of this forum, and you guys both are representatives in how we can partner with the U.S. and its allies. And so maybe Fatih to start, last year the U.S. Air Force awarded Sierra Nevada Corp a $13 billion contract for its SAOC program to replace its Night Watch fleet. We've seen similar success for you guys with Dream Chaser. The government's even showed a willingness recently to bid out sort of failed contracts to other contractors in order to give them a chance. You've been working with the government for decades. What's different today that you're seeing, and what's encouraging you right now?
Well, it's a lot of difference today than I've seen in the last 30 plus years. And it's a very interesting time, interesting place. And my company is also in a very interesting place because we are unique in our own space where, as an entrepreneur, immigrant, founder, builder, and one of the largest privately held companies now in the government contracting, I've lived through this entire spectrum, and my entire life was focused on having an environment like this today, which was how you challenge the status quo, how you bring the new innovation, disruptive innovation, and how you expand the industrial base. Because we have a major problem in our country here, especially dealing with peer threats and great power competition. Our industrial base is so consolidated on top, and the bottom, even the supplier base is being consolidated. Mid-tier is totally missing. So timing is very interesting right now. The willingness of bringing commercial technologies, Silicon Valley, into conventional, traditional, bureaucratic defense environment is much needed. So what we need to do is really not protect the industrial base, but expand the industrial base. The way to do that will be we need more competition. We need a government to kind of level the playing field and have those reforms that we are talking about, accountability, responsibility, and focus on not just the acquisition reform. Acquisition is to me, kind of low-hanging fruit for almost every administration. We have so many reforms, one after another one, but we got to fix the requirements side of things and the budgeting side of things as well for this to be effective. So I'm excited to be where we are today as being a hybrid between, beating programs, getting major efforts like the major 747 program that we just won, going against Boeing's of the world at the same time, partnering with Palantir, Anduril, and the newcomers, if you will, including smaller companies. So what we need to do is, since I've been there, I am trying to build that ecosystem that we are missing right now. With the smaller companies and privately held companies, there's a difference between privately held and publicly held companies too. So I have seen the best and the worst, but right now the environment is very convenient for making those big changes. The question is, can we execute some of these promises? There's so much excitement, there's so much pull from top. Our users want it, our mission warfighters want it, and the bottom wants it, but the middle layer is the one that we are trying to work through.
And what you're describing is what we're going to talk about a lot here is, what are the unique strengths and what is uniquely American in how we do this, right? And what you're describing is more competition and more cooperation, right? Senator Shaheen, we've crossed over the first 100 days of the administration. What has been encouraging to those 100 days, and then what would you like to see the next 100 days look like, right? Where can they improve?
Well, I have some concerns about the first 100 days, but one of the things that I agree with Fatih on is that we've got to look at how we address our defense industrial base in a way that ensures that we are safer and more secure as a country. And one of the things that I think the Ukrainian war has revealed to us is that our defense base is not in as good a shape as we had hoped it would be. And we've got to think about, as you say, not just procurement reform. And while it is low-hanging fruit, no administration has seemed to do that very well to date. True. And so that's still a problem. I can tell you when the war in Ukraine started and several of us tried to look at multi-year contracting so that that could happen without going back to the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. We were not very successful because, and I'm an appropriator, the appropriators didn't want to give up control. But I also talked to a lot of companies in New Hampshire who are doing defense work. They're building out their lines to do the defense work, and then they think they've got a long-term contract, and suddenly, a year or two down the road, they don't. They've built out this line, they've hired people, and they can't continue to operate. So I think that's one of the things we need to do. We had a hearing yesterday for the Assistant Secretary for the Industrial Base Policy. And one of the things we talked to him about, the nominee about, was the fact that we don't track what's happening with our supply chains. The Department of Defense doesn't track that. So when COVID hit, we didn't know what we had because we weren't tracking it. Well, we're still not tracking it. And we said, okay, we've got all these tariffs that are now going to have an impact on supply chain, and yet we still don't have a program to track that at the Department of Defense to see what difference that's making. And I can tell you, I was at a company in New Hampshire Ball Bearings, last week. They make bearings for the aerospace industry. They do a lot of work with the Defense Department. And they told me that because of the steel tariffs, that their time frame for steel, for their ball bearings, has gone from 20 weeks to 2.5 years. Well, that's a problem as we think about what we need for our military to defend the United States. So I think there are a number of things we need to do, and that's certainly on the list of how are we tracking, what difference are the tariffs making, and what other initiatives do we have to put in place to ensure that we can expand on our industrial base in the way that we need to be secure. Because I can tell you that China is not waiting for us. They're going on their own. And if we're going to be competitive, we got to figure out how to do this better.
On that competitive point, can you talk about how America can leverage our unique strengths and positioning to win the great power competition, right? What are the things we should double down on, triple down on that are unique for us? And your perspective is interesting, right? As the top ranking woman on the Armed Services Committee, ranking member on the Foreign Relations Committee, you've been a real leader for domestic and foreign policy. Maybe give us some insight into kind of your thoughts around how we navigate good domestic policy, good foreign policy, and how we double and triple down on the strengths that America has.
Well, you asked me about the first 100 days of this administration, and I'm actually concerned about several areas because I think a number of actions that have been taken undercut our ability to compete with China rather than promote our ability to compete. And one of those is our foreign assistance programs. Now, we can all argue about whether we should be able to decrease the overhead for foreign assistance or not, but as the result of the cuts that Elon Musk and Doge have made, we've cut about 90% of our foreign assistance. And we're already seeing China moving in to the places where we have moved out of. In Rwanda, they've taken over a program for maternity and child care. Myanmar, after the earthquake several weeks ago, we sent a 3-person team to Myanmar to assess the damage. While they were on the ground in Myanmar, they were fired, and China moved in with over 30 teams and a commitment of over $10 million to help with the earthquake damage. So that's a challenge for us. We had a hearing this morning in the Appropriations Committee about scientific research, and we had representatives from the scientific community around healthcare there. And virtually we had the head of the Cancer Institute from the University of Alabama. We had someone from a medical lab facility in Maine. We had someone who heads the Science Association. And we had somebody who works with the FDA, an association to promote the FDA and effective, stable regulation. And they all said, look, the cuts that we're making right now to scientific research in healthcare mean that we're going to lose our scientists for the next generation because they're not going to stay here if they can't do their clinical trials, if they can't do their research. And most of that research is funded by the government in terms of healthcare. It's not being funded by the private sector when we're looking at things like cancer research. And so again, our ability to compete with China is not just on a military level, it's on an economic level, as all of you know. And if we are not making those investments to position us for the next generation, then we're losing that fight. And based on the actions that I've seen in the first 100 days, we are not investing. We are not positioning ourselves in the way that we need to in order to win the battle with China.
So this is making sure that we invest in maintaining our technological lead and research lead, but also, which is very true, right? China will willingly fill a void from a foreign policy perspective, so making sure that we still maintain presence in places and support.
Right. I mean, China's increasing their diplomatic footprint around the world. We're talking about reducing our footprint.
Well, Africa's a great example where we've really lost that battle, and there's other places, definitely. Yeah. Fatih, as a founder, we talk a lot about, calling, the theme of today has also been about founders and founder mode a lot. But, as an entrepreneur running your business, how does our country, from your point of view, right, win against China, and what are the strengths that we should double and triple down on, from your perspective?
Well, a lot of things that Senator said is very important. So how do you protect our supply base, small businesses? That's essential. The industrial base is key. But and many other things you said about my pay grade, so I'm not going to go there per se. But I think from my perspective, one of the things that we have to do that we don't have, that China has, is whole of government, whole of nation. One guy can says, go do this, everybody lines up. So how do we achieve in our country the whole of nation, whole of government approach? We don't even have whole of Air Force, Navy, Army. I mean, we have so many spread out different areas. So one of the things I think that I see that can be done, bring these new investments to capital markets, which is our strength, and innovation, and AI, and Silicon Valley, the commercial technologies into the mix, number one. Number two, we have to really allow the competition take place in a fair way so that the best wins, not necessarily favored or not because you have been there for 30, 40 years.
That's for the biggest company.
Exactly. So majority of, hundreds of billions of dollars, almost half of our total spending in DoD budget is going to a handful of primes, 5-some primes. And like I said, the middle tier is missing. So we have a challenge to fill that ecosystem. Industrial base will be very, very important. And in terms of how you bring the other companies into the play, that's one thing that the example you gave on that major Air Force program, the National Command Control Center called Doomsday's plane. Hopefully we'll never get there, but it's a National Command Center for President and SecDef and everybody else. The way that we won that was this strategy I'm going to talk about is the open architectures. What you do is open architecture and share data rights. So if you share data rights with the government, this may go against some of the specific IP protection things and innovation, what have you, but in general, I think the fact that I don't care, it's a fighter, it could be F-35, B-21, anything, but if you open the architecture, you're not afraid that government can go away from you, pick another contractor. They only pick you because they want you, not because they have to come to you. That opens up the spectrum for any company that can do better and plug in their system. So you have a plug-and-play architecture. That's how we build an entire infrastructure of the industrial base. So we have to have these new way of thinking. Everybody talks about open architecture, but we really don't have it yet fully. I mean, F-35 could be a wonderful program, but it could be so many other partners in there that it's not. It's going through a hierarchy, and it's very difficult to break into that. I've been fighting all my life to break the vendor lock, and it's so hard. Even at the, I mean, no name necessary, but secretary levels of service secretaries, they complain about not being able to do that. So I think we need new policies and reforms to be able to open that industrial base, like Senator said, that is too concentrated on top. And the bottom is also being concentrated. Suppliers are being bought out by a lot of financial firms, and it's getting more expensive, and the problems are getting harder. So that's one key aspect. The second piece, I'll give the example of NASA, the way that they've done this Space Act agreement, where it's really a public-private partnership. It's a different way of government buying products and services. Instead of getting an RFP, here's the money, go build it, I'm going to pay you as you go. You have a skin in the game, you contractor, and I will have a skin in the game. So with that, I mean, there will be no SpaceX, no Dream Chaser, none of those newcomers into the commercial called COTS program. NASA started this a while ago. And that's a different model. And that's what we do right now. I mean, a lot of the new founders and new companies, tech companies, especially commercial tech, and some defense tech are putting a lot of skin in the game, more than they probably should sometimes, but that's what's needed. But the government needs to be part of that. The government needs to first create the demand signal, secondly, invest along with us, and we invest hundreds of millions of dollars to win this major program. I'm giving one example. There's so many examples I can give you over the years. How do you break the vendor lock? That's what it takes. And those are the things that I think we can do against China. Then, other thing in the international comment that you made in terms of our leadership is space is a very important domain. We have Golden Dome initiative started now, which is very important from the whole of government approach. You can't do a Golden Dome unless left hand talking to the right hand. You have to have all domains from undersea to the deep space connected to be able to intercept these missiles, protect ourselves. So to be able to do that, space is going to be key. A very different domain, as you heard National Security Advisor Waltz this morning talk about, first shots will be made in space if there was a war. So I think that's on the warfighting side. On the civil leadership side, NASA's role is very important. So I'm concerned about science budgets also being cut. That is a shorter term view of saving money, but in the long run, you pay a price. How do we keep US leadership? How do we keep a space station alive? That all the other countries come in. Right now, we are planning how we bring ours down. China built new one up. They're sending people, they're giving free access to all the other countries. And just like the Africa example, we are falling behind. So we need that initiative leaning forward, make the investment so we could continue our leadership and protect our values, because that's how you promote the values. The other countries, the world sees that we protect our freedoms and we can fight in space and other domains, but also we are leading the way ahead for future research, exploration, inventing new drugs. I mean, there are a lot of companies here, like Varda we were talking about today. They were trying to bring that back to the way that it was before. Apollo days, and I got inspired. I watched the moon landing, a little kid. I want to go to this country, we need that inspiration. We need that energy and excitement put in place. So I think that helps to lift the whole country industrial base and also inspire the world and deter China from a fight. I think we can, if we are strong enough, we will deter it. I believe in the peace from strength peace.
And look, I think Congress certainly has a responsibility here that we've not been doing a very good job at. One of the biggest challenges we have is getting a budget done every year. What I hear is that one of the most, you all know that uncertainty is one of the biggest challenges that you face as business people. And when you're not certain that Congress is going to pass a budget every year, then you don't know if you should make the investments. And DOD can't say, we're going to we're going to keep this contract because we don't know what Congress is doing. The fact that we're operating on a continuing resolution for the remainder of this year means that there are no new programs are supposed to be started when we're in a continuing resolution. Well, what kind of environment does that mean for the kind of certainty that we need in order to make investments? And, you know, I put the responsibility squarely at the feet of the partisanship that has developed in Congress in a way that is not in the best interest of this country and what we need to do. And I don't know how we get out of that, but I know that's a real problem because that's one of the things that's keeping us from doing what we need to do in Congress, particularly with respect to the budget.
Well, on that point, right, we need more leaders in Congress like yourself and all the folks who spoke today who work across the aisle and are actually forward-thinking on policy. What can our community, what can the tech community do to support folks like yourself and support you better?
Well, I think to make your voices heard and let people know that you don't think it's acceptable to have that kind of partisanship. You know, you're talking about NASA and the role of NASA and what China's doing. I remember when we had the longest government shutdown that was going on over the budget, China was landing on the dark side of the moon, something that we hadn't done. And we were in a government shutdown. We can't hope to compete with that as the basis on which we operate. And so I would say to all of you, you need to make it clear to people on both sides of the aisle that you don't think that's acceptable, that you want to see people work together, you want to see things get done, and if people aren't willing to work that way, you're not going to give any contributions. No. Don't fund candidates. Don't fund political committees. That'll get people responding.
I have a more extreme solution, maybe.
Oh, good. What is it?
Half of a joke, but accountability is key to everything, right?
Absolutely.
Accountability in DoD, government, that's one of the biggest things that we have, accountability based on the merits and how do you keep track of who's doing what. So the Congress, nothing personal, but I think there's a lot of finger pointing going on. So like any other business, if I don't make my payroll, I can't pay my rent, I'm not going to be in the business. So maybe our representatives shouldn't get their paycheck until they pass the budget and keep them accountable to something. I mean, waiting 2 years or 6 years to elect them or not elect them again is too long. People don't have that long of a memory. That's the way to do that, keep them accountable. But we need to find some other ways because you hit the nail on the head with the CR. I mean, there's so many investments. We are holding up ourselves. Other people are holding up. We don't know what's going to happen. Uncertainty kills the business. So we need a more predictable, accountable structure in our government that across the board, that accountability, responsibility, and authority all three line up.
I mean, that's a market force dynamic that works all the time. You run a business, you're accountable to your customers, it creates good incentives. Only in government do you remove that, right? From government contracting all the way down where you get rid of those, that feedback that creates the right incentives. That's a good point.
Well,
yeah.
I would argue those of us who are governors who are now in the Senate kind of joke about the fact that when you're a governor, you have to be accountable because you don't have the ability to say it's somebody else's fault because you're in charge. And so we kind of joke that if everybody in the Senate had been a governor as opposed to people who are coming from other elected positions, that we wouldn't have that problem.
That's good. Fatih, maybe to end it, what can government do for you, right? You represent the tech ecosystem, you represent industry. You know, if you were to quickly say, what's the one thing that you think government could do better to support you?
I think government being able to share their requirements early, way early, not focus on a very detailed, specific product specs, because the requirements process takes a long time, and by the time it becomes acquisition and sustainment and everything. So one recommendation I have, let users share their capability requirements with us, not product specs. I'm trying to take this Chinese satellite out. Tell me how I can do that, as opposed to saying, and design this widget, this much power, this much accuracy, and do all this. The second piece is I encourage our government to look at life cycle costs. I think that's where we are paying a huge inefficiency bill, because we are buying things at the front end. That's only 1/3 of the cost. 2/3 of the cost is the sustainment. So we are not, a lot of times, we as government fall for the trap, buy this airplane, buy this platform or weapon, sensor, whatever it is, because it's a better deal for me now, and I pay arm and a leg later. I'm not only stuck with a single company that can take me to cleaners if they wanted to, but also it's not efficient. So how do you have a full life cycle cost view of life? When the requirement comes in, I need this, even if it's in a shorter term, 5-year cycle maybe, don't design a system for the next 30, 40 years, because Indo-PACOM, Admiral Paparo screaming, saying, I need to be ready in 2 years from now. Clock is ticking. Now, 2 years.
Right.
And most people you talk in the building, the DoD, they're talking about 5, 10, 15-year, nice, exquisite programs and ideas. So how do we address that? So that will be what government can do, saying, I have this timeline, I need speed and scale. That is 2 things we need against China. Speed and scale, as fast as we can build things at high quantities, and we need to build them fast.
It's a great place to end. Fatih Ozmen, Senator Shaheen, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Fatih.